The courthouse fell silent as General Sarah Hayes presented the final piece of evidence, exposing a criminal network that had terrorized America's coastal towns for years. Behind her sat dozens of local business owners, police officers, and citizens from Lighthouse Cove, all there to witness justice being served. No one would have guessed that just months ago, their peaceful seaside town was under the iron grip of the Wild Wolves motorcycle gang and corrupt officials who thought they were untouchable. And nobody knew that their downfall began with a single confrontation at a quiet diner, when they made the mistake of threatening the wrong woman over a cup of coffee. This is the story of General Sarah Hayes, a decorated Army commander whose 30 years of classified operations prepared her for dismantling one of the largest criminal enterprises on the East Coast. It's about how her decision to stand up to two bikers one quiet evening sparked an operation that would expose $100 million weapons trafficking rings, corrupt politicians, and international criminal networks. A tale of how sometimes the most dangerous person in the room isn't the one making threats, but the quiet woman in the corner who knows exactly how to take down an empire. But to understand how an entire criminal organization crumbled, how corrupt officials ended up in federal prison, and how a network of small coastal towns reclaimed their freedom, we need to go back to that fateful evening at the Lighthouse Diner, when the Wild Wolves made the biggest mistake of their lives. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. The evening fog rolled thick off the ocean, blanketing the streets of Lighthouse Cove in a ghostly shroud. General Sarah Hayes sat alone at her usual window booth in the Lighthouse Diner, watching the steam rise from her coffee cup in lazy spirals. She'd chosen this small coastal town precisely because nothing ever happened here. After 30 years of classified operations and missions that would never make the history books, all she wanted was quiet. Betty Williams, the silver-haired owner who'd run the diner for over 3 decades, approached with a fresh pot of coffee. "You're too young to look so tired, dear," she said, topping off Sarah's cup. Her warm smile reminded Sarah of her mother, gone now 15 years. Betty had no idea about the nightmares that still woke Sarah in cold sweats, or why she always chose the booth with the clearest view of both exits. The peaceful evening shattered as 5 motorcycles roared into the parking lot, their engines deliberately loud enough to rattle the diner's windows. The other customers tensed, conversations dying mid-sentence. Betty's smile faltered as she gripped the coffee pot tighter. Sarah watched the Wild Wolves' distinctive wolf emblem on their leather jackets as they dismounted, noting how the other patrons suddenly found their breakfast extremely interesting. Marcus Spike Davidson led the way, his scarred face twisting into what he probably thought was a charming smile as he surveyed the room. His lieutenant, Tank Thompson, followed close behind, both men moving with the exaggerated confidence of bullies who'd never faced real resistance. Spike's gaze lingered on Sarah for a moment too long before turning to Betty. "Betty, sweetheart," he called out, his voice carrying an edge that made several patrons look away. "We missed you at the town meeting last night. Mayor Wilson was disappointed." Betty's hands trembled slightly as she set down the coffee pot. "Had inventory to do, Spike. You know how it is." Sure, Spike replied, moving closer. "But see, when the mayor calls a meeting, it's not really optional. He's trying to help this town grow, and he needs everyone's support." His hand came down hard on the counter, making Betty flinch. Sarah watched the exchange silently, her coffee forgotten. She cataloged details with practiced precision. Tank carried a knife in his boot, poorly concealed. Spike's jacket bulged slightly on the left side, amateur mistake for a shoulder holster. Their confident posture suggested they were used to intimidation working, but their sloppy weapon discipline told her they'd never faced serious resistance. "Maybe," Betty said, her voice stronger now, "the mayor should focus on running the town instead of letting criminals dictate policy." The diner went dead silent. Spike's fake smile vanished. "What did you just say to me, old woman?" he growled, reaching across the counter. Sarah moved before conscious thought took over. 30 years of military command experience kicked in as she grabbed Spike's wrist, applying precise pressure to nerve clusters that made his fingers spasm open. "That's enough," she said, her voice quiet but carrying the authority that had commanded thousands. Tank moved toward her, but Sarah's gaze stopped him cold. "I wouldn't," she advised. "Your draw is slow, and you telegraph your intentions. By the time you clear leather, this will be over." "You have no idea who you're dealing with, lady," Spike snarled, trying to pull his hand free. Sarah's grip remained iron. "Actually, I do," she replied calmly. "Marcus Spike Davidson. Dishonorable discharge from the Army in 18. You and the Wild Wolves have been running protection rackets up and down the coast, but lately you've moved up to something bigger. Did I miss anything?" The color drained from Spike's face. Tank's hand twitched toward his concealed weapon, but Sarah's voice stopped him. "Last warning. Your choice how this ends." For a long moment, nobody moved. Then Spike raised his free hand in surrender. All right, we're leaving." Sarah released him, stepping back to give them space to exit. As they mounted their bikes, Spike shot one last glare through the window. "This isn't over." "Oh, it can be," Sarah replied, though he couldn't hear her. "That's entirely up to you." As the motorcycles roared away, Betty approached with shaking hands. "Who are you?" she whispered. Sarah sat back down, taking a sip of her now cold coffee. "Just someone who's seen enough bullies for one lifetime." But as she watched the Wild Wolves disappear into the fog, she knew Spike was right about one thing. This wasn't over. She just painted a target on her back, and if her instincts were correct, the protection racket was just the tip of the iceberg. Betty placed a fresh cup of coffee in front of her, along with a slice of apple pie. "Whatever happens next," the older woman said firmly, "you're not alone." Sarah nodded, already running through scenarios in her mind. She'd chosen this town looking for peace, but sometimes peace had to be fought for. And if it was a fight the Wild Wolves wanted, they were about to learn why army generals were the last people you wanted as enemies. Late that evening, Sarah sat in her small apartment above the Lighthouse Diner, cleaning her Glock 19 with practiced precision. The encounter with the Wild Wolves played over in her mind as she considered her next move. A knock at her door interrupted her thoughts. "It's open, Sheriff," she called out, not looking up from her work. Sheriff Tom Cooper stepped inside, his weathered face betraying concern. "Word travels fast in a small town. Heard you had a run-in with Spike and his boys." "News to me," Sarah replied, reassembling her weapon. "I just had a friendly chat with some customers who were being impolite." Cooper sighed, settling into a chair across from her. "Look, Commander Mitchell." "Sarah," she corrected. "I know about your background. When you moved here 6 months ago, I ran a check. 30 years in the Army, multiple commendations, things so classified even my law enforcement clearance couldn't access them." Sarah finally looked up, meeting his gaze. "Then you know I can handle myself." "That's what worries me. The Wild Wolves aren't just some local gang anymore. They've got connections, deep ones." Cooper leaned forward, lowering his voice. "Last month, my deputy found a suspicious shipment at the port. Before we could investigate, orders came down from the state level to back off. Sounds like someone's being paid to look the other way. Mayor Wilson holds meetings at the Wild Wolves clubhouse. Half the city council drives new cars they shouldn't be able to afford. The Port Authority suddenly has funding for extensive renovations." Cooper's voice tightened. "I've got a teenage daughter, Sarah. I can't risk—" "So you turn a blind eye," Sarah finished for him. "I do what I can without getting my people killed." Cooper stood, adjusting his belt. "I'm not here to tell you what to do. Just be careful. Spike isn't the real power in the Wild Wolves. His boss, Marcus Cross, is coming to town next week. The man's got connections to smuggling operations across 3 continents." Sarah's expression remained neutral, but her mind was racing. Cross was a name she'd heard before, during her last mission with Army intelligence, an operation that had gone sideways, costing the lives of 2 of her teammates. "Thanks for the warning, Sheriff." As Cooper reached the door, he paused. "For what it's worth, Betty Williams is a good woman. Been serving coffee and pie in this town since I was a kid. What you did today? Well, it's about time someone stood up for her." After Cooper left, Sarah pulled out her phone, dialing a number she hadn't used in months. Reynolds speaking. Mike, it's Hayes. Remember that smuggling operation we tracked in Singapore? The one that got Johnson and Martinez killed? A pause. The one that got away? Yeah, I think I found his supply chain, Lighthouse Cove of all places. Christ, Sarah, you're supposed to be retired. I need everything you can get me on Marcus Cross and the Wild Wolves MC. Official channels only. I don't want to burn any of your backdoor sources. Mike sighed. Give me 48 hours. And Sarah? Be careful. Cross isn't someone you want to tangle with alone. Who said I'm alone? Sarah ended the call and moved to the window, watching as two Wild Wolves prospects tried to look casual while monitoring the diner from across the street. Their surveillance was amateur, sloppy. They wanted her to know she was being watched. Her phone buzzed with a text from Mike. Initial data coming through. Cross definitely your guy. Got coordinates for multiple port facilities. Also, local intel suggests retired Spec Ops presence in town. Might be worth connecting. Sarah smiled. Things were falling into place. Telling and preparing this story took us a lot of time. So if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. The morning crowd would start filtering in soon. Regulars who'd witnessed yesterday's confrontation. Word had spread. Someone had finally stood up to the Wild Wolves. Around noon, Deputy Sarah Martinez entered, making a beeline for Sarah's usual booth. Got something you need to see, she said quietly, sliding a manila envelope across the table. Sarah reviewed the photos inside. Surveillance footage from the port. Wild Wolves members overseeing cargo containers being moved at night. Professional security teams that didn't match the gang's usual muscle. Documentation with very official stamps. When? Last night. And here's the thing. They're getting sloppy, scared. Spike's got his people watching this place, watching you, but they're not being subtle about it. Sarah had noticed. Two prospects had been parked across the street all morning, trying too hard to look casual. Your boss know you're showing me this? Martinez smiled grimly. Tom's a good man, but he's scared. Me? I'm tired of watching these bastards destroy our town. Betty was there for me when my mom died. Made sure I had hot meals and a place to do homework. I've got her back, same as you. Sarah studied the young deputy. There was steel in her spine, fire in her eyes. Another potential ally. Be careful, Sarah warned. If they realize you're helping me, I can handle myself, and I'm not the only one who's had enough. As if on cue, the rumble of motorcycles approached. But these weren't Wild Wolves. The riders' patches identified them as the Iron Veterans, a group Sarah had noticed around town but never interacted with. Their leader, a massive man known as Stone, dismounted first, his massive frame filling the doorway as he entered. His eyes scanned the room before settling on Sarah. Mind if we join you? He asked, his voice a gravelly rumble. Deputy Martinez tensed, but Sarah nodded as Stone and three of his officers slid into the booth. Betty appeared with coffee, seemingly unfazed by the new arrivals. Heard you had words with Spike, Stone said after Betty left. Man's got a reputation for holding grudges. Is that why you're here, to warn me? Stone chuckled. No, ma'am. We're here because the Wild Wolves are moving contraband through our territory without permission. Military-grade hardware, the kind that gets people killed. He glanced at Martinez, who stood her ground. We thought you might be interested in a conversation about mutual interests. Sarah leaned back, studying the bikers. Their posture, the way they carried themselves. Definitely military backgrounds. And unlike the Wild Wolves, they looked her in the eye with respect, not challenge. I'm listening. Stone glanced at Deputy Martinez again. Deputy Martinez stays, Sarah said firmly. She's part of this. Fair enough. Stone leaned forward. Cross is coming to oversee a major shipment. Something big enough that Spike's got his people running scared. We've got intel, manpower, and motivation. What we need is someone who knows how to run an op like this. Someone with army training. You hear a lot in a small community. Military folks, word gets around. Stone's voice softened slightly. I knew Johnson. He was a good man. The mention of her fallen teammate hung in the air. After a moment, Sarah spoke. "If we do this, we do it my way. Clean, precise, by the book. No cowboy stuff." "Wouldn't have it any other way, Commander." As the Iron veterans left, Martinez let out a breath she'd been holding. "You sure about this?" Sarah watched the bikers mount up through the window. The two Wild Wolves prospects across the street were frantically making phone calls. "No," she admitted. "But sometimes you have to work with the devil you know to take down the one you don't." The pieces were moving now. Cross was coming, bringing with him whatever operation had Spike so nervous. The Iron veterans were on board, and Martinez represented a potential link to legitimate law enforcement. Now all Sarah needed was a plan that wouldn't get everyone killed. Night had fallen over the small coastal town when Sarah's phone buzzed with an encrypted message from Mike. She opened the file to find detailed satellite imagery of 3 locations around the port. Warehouses registered to shell companies but clearly serving as Wild Wolves storage facilities. A knock at her door interrupted her analysis. "You've got visitors," Betty whispered from the other side. "In the back alley. They say they're friends of yours." Sarah grabbed her Glock, following Betty down the back stairs. In the shadowy alley, she found Stone and his sergeant-at-arms, along with an unexpected figure, Sheriff Cooper. "We've got a problem," Cooper said without preamble. "Cross isn't just coming for a routine inspection. He's moving his entire operation here permanently." "Why?" Sarah asked, though she was already piecing it together. Stone spoke. "Lighthouse Cove's perfect. Remote, controlled local government, easy access to shipping lanes. But that's not the real reason." He handed Sarah a folder. "Our contacts spotted these guys arriving at the private airstrip outside town. The surveillance photos showed familiar faces, members of the same smuggling network Sarah had encountered in Singapore. The operation that had gone wrong. They're consolidating," Sarah muttered. "Using the Wild Wolves as cover for a major distribution hub." "It gets worse," Cooper added. "Mayor Wilson called an emergency council meeting tonight. They're voting to slash the police budget by 60%. I'll have to lay off half my deputies, including Martinez." "Clearing the board," Sarah concluded, "making sure there's no official resistance." Stone nodded grimly. "Cross arrives in 3 days. Spike's boys are already setting up additional security. Whatever they're planning, it's big." Sarah studied the photos again. "They'll be expecting trouble from law enforcement, maybe rival gangs, but they won't be looking for an army intelligence operation." "Not exactly," Cooper corrected. "Not exactly," Stone smiled. "Half my crew are former Special Forces, Rangers, Marine Recon, even a couple of Delta boys. We've kept it quiet, maintained our cover as just another MC, but we've got the training." Sarah raised an eyebrow. "A motorcycle club full of Spec Ops veterans?" "Someone's got to watch out for the little guy," Stone replied. "We've been tracking Cross for months, gathering intel, but we needed someone with your specific experience to put it all together." The back door opened and Martinez stepped out, still in her deputy uniform. "We've got movement. 3 Wild Wolves trucks just left their compound, headed for the warehouse district. They're moving things around," Sarah said, "consolidating their valuable assets where they can protect them better." She turned to Cooper. "Sheriff, I know you're trying to protect your people, but we're going to need some official cover for this." Cooper sighed heavily. "What did you have in mind?" "I need Martinez and any deputies you trust completely to do some selective enforcement. Traffic stops, license checks, anything to slow down their movements and gather intel." "They'll complain to Wilson," Cooper warned. "Let them. It'll make them sloppy, paranoid." She turned to Stone. "I need your people to start pressure testing their security. Nothing obvious, just enough to keep them looking in the wrong direction." Stone grinned. "Already started. My boys ran a few bikes past their checkpoints earlier, got them all spun up about potential rivals moving in." "Good. They'll be expecting gang warfare. They won't be looking for a surgical strike." Sarah pulled out her phone, showing them Mike's satellite imagery. "We've got 3 days to map their security, identify vulnerabilities, and set up for the main event." "And what exactly is the main event?" Martinez asked. "We're going to let Cross set up his operation exactly as planned. Let him bring in his international contacts, his whole network, And then, Sarah smiled coldly, we're going to take it all down at once. But we'll need one more piece of the puzzle, Cooper said. What's that? Evidence, Cooper replied. Enough to bypass Wilson and go straight to the feds. The kind of evidence that makes even corrupt politicians run for cover. Betty, who had been quietly listening, spoke up. I might be able to help with that. The diner's been here for 40 years, Betty continued. Everybody comes through here eventually. Even people who think they're too important to be seen in a place like this. And everybody talks. Sarah looked at the older woman with newfound respect. You've been keeping track? Names, dates, conversations? I may be just a diner owner, but I'm not stupid. I knew someday someone would need to know what really goes on in this town. Betty pulled a worn leather notebook from her apron pocket. 9 years of notes. Everything from Wilson's first meeting with the Wild Wolves to which council members started living beyond their means. Stone let out a low whistle. Ma'am, you might just be the most dangerous person here. Meet back here tomorrow night, Sarah instructed. Stone, bring your best people. Sheriff, we'll need everything Betty's collected plus whatever your deputies can legally gather. We've got one shot at this. As the group dispersed, Betty touched Sarah's arm. You're not just doing this for the town, are you? This is personal. Sarah thought of her fallen teammates, of the mission that had gone wrong. Sometimes personal motivation just means you'll work harder to get it right. Back in her apartment, Sarah spread out the intel, starting to form a plan. Cross had no idea he was walking into a trap 3 years in the making. He thought he was expanding his empire, but he was really stepping into a sniper's crosshair. Her phone buzzed with a text from Mike. Satellite shows more movement. Whatever they're planning, it's massive. Watch your six. Sarah sent back a simple reply. Don't worry, this time we're ready for them. The next morning brought tense activity across town. Martinez and the remaining trusted deputies conducted strategic traffic stops on Wild Wolves' vehicles, while Iron Veterans members made their presence known through carefully orchestrated drive-bys of gang territory. Sarah sat at her usual spot in the Lighthouse Diner, watching Jake and 2 of his lieutenants arguing intensely across the street. Their frustration was visible even from a distance. Your coffee's getting cold, Betty said, sliding into the booth across from her. She placed her worn notebook on the table. Here's everything I've got on Wilson and his cronies. 10 years of notes, conversations, meetings that weren't supposed to happen. Sarah flipped through the pages, her expression hardening. Betty, this is more than just weapons smuggling. They've been laundering money through half the businesses in town. Why do you think I started keeping track? My herald, God rest his soul, always said knowledge was power. When he passed and they started pressuring me to sell the diner, I knew I needed insurance. A commotion outside drew their attention. Spike was shoving one of his own men against a wall, clearly enraged. The pressure was getting to them. Sarah's phone buzzed. A message from Stone. Package secured. Meet at the old cannery. I need to go, Sarah told Betty. Stay alert. Things are going to get tense before they get better. The abandoned cannery sat on the outskirts of town, its rusted equipment serving as silent sentinels. Sarah found Stone and his core team waiting inside, along with an unexpected guest, a bound and gagged Wild Wolves prospect. Found him snooping around our territory, Stone explained. Figured he might have something interesting to share. Sarah approached the terrified prospect. She recognized him, one of the newer recruits, barely old enough to drink. What's your name, kid? Tommy, he stammered after Stone removed the gag. All right, Tommy, let's talk about the shipment coming in with Cross. I don't know anything about, Tommy started. Save it, Sarah cut him off. You're wearing a prospect cut, which means you do the grunt work. Loading, unloading, keeping watch, you know things. The question is, are you willing to share those things, or do we have to get creative? The young man swallowed hard. They'll kill me. Kid, Stone growled, what do you think they'll do when they find out you got caught on our turf? Tommy broke. The words poured out. Shipping schedules, guard rotations, the layout of the compound. But it was his last piece of information that made Sarah's blood run cold. They've got some kind of list, he said. Names, locations. Cross is bringing it personally. Spike said it's worth more than all the weapons combined. Sarah and Stone exchanged looks. A list like that could expose entire trafficking networks, reveal every corrupt official on Cross's payroll. One more thing, Tommy added, his voice shaking. They know someone's working against them. Spike called in extra muscle. Professional guys, not just bikers. Sarah's phone buzzed again. Martinez. Problem. Wilson just suspended Cooper, named Spike's brother as interim sheriff. Put him somewhere safe, Sarah told Stone, nodding toward Tommy. He might be useful later. Back at the diner, Sarah found Martinez waiting with Cooper and Betty. The former sheriff looked defeated. They're moving faster than we expected, Cooper said. Wilson called it a routine administrative review, but we all know what this means. Martinez added, My badge probably won't be worth much by morning. Sarah considered their options. With Cooper out and legitimate law enforcement compromised, they'd lost their official cover. Her phone buzzed yet again. Mike. Satellite shows major movement. Multiple vehicles converging on your location. Professional operators, not gang members. Watch yourself. As if on cue, 3 black SUVs with tinted windows rolled slowly past the diner. They're not even trying to be subtle anymore, Martinez muttered. They don't need to be, Sarah replied. They think they've got control of the town. That makes them confident. Confidence makes them sloppy. Betty watched the SUVs disappear around the corner. What do we do now? We change the plan, Sarah said firmly. They're expecting resistance from law enforcement or rival gangs, so we give them exactly what they're watching for while we hit them from a direction they'll never see coming. The Iron Veterans? Cooper asked. Part of it, but we've got another card to play. Sarah pulled out her phone, dialing Mike. Remember that favor you owe me? I need satellite coverage real time, and I need you to make some calls. It's time to wake up some old ghosts. As night fell over the town, more black SUVs arrived. Professional mercenaries mixed with Wild Wolves members, setting up checkpoints and patrol routes. They were preparing for war, but they were preparing for the wrong kind of fight. In the basement of the Lighthouse Diner, Sarah laid out the revised plan to her core team. The Iron Veterans would play their part, making noise and drawing attention. Martinez and Cooper would work their remaining law enforcement contacts. Betty's evidence would be their insurance policy. But the operation would come from the shadows, executed by people who specialized in the impossible. Tomorrow, Sarah told them, Cross arrives with his precious list and his international contacts. He's expecting to find a town under his complete control. Instead, he's going to find out what happens when you underestimate the wrong people. Outside, thunder rolled across the bay. A storm was coming to Lighthouse Cove. By the time it was over, nothing would be the same. Sarah's phone lit up with a series of encrypted messages. The first was from Mike. Ghost team activated. 6 operators, all former teammates. They're yours if you want them. The second was from an unknown number. Commander Ghost Lead here. Team is in position awaiting your orders. The third was from Stone. My people report Cross's advance team doing recon. They're thorough, professional. These aren't regular muscle. Sarah gathered her team closer. Listen carefully. What I'm about to tell you doesn't leave this room. In about 6 hours, Cross and his people are going to execute what they think is a perfect takeover of this town. They have the numbers, the weapons, and the tactical advantage. What they don't have is understanding of who they're really fighting. She spread out a detailed map of Lighthouse Cove. They're watching the streets, the obvious approaches. They've got eyes on law enforcement, on the Iron Veterans, on anyone they think might resist. But they're not watching the shadows, and that's where we're going to hurt them. The Ghost Team, Martinez said quietly. Sarah nodded. 6 operators, all former special operations people who know how to move without being seen. They've been in position since yesterday, mapping patrol routes, identifying vulnerabilities. Cooper studied the map. Even with them, we're still outnumbered. Numbers don't win fights, Sarah replied. Position, timing, and initiative do. Besides, we're not looking to win a straight fight. Betty spread out her notebook. I've marked every business they're using to launder money, every warehouse where they store contraband. If we hit them all at once, chaos, Stone finished. They won't know where to focus their response. Sarah's phone buzzed again. Mike. Final satellite pass shows Cross's convoy is mobilizing. Multiple vehicles, heavy security, ETA 0600. Perfect, Sarah said. That gives us 5 hours to get everything in place. Stone, get your people ready. Martinez, Cooper, coordinate with the Ghost Team's recon. Betty, the older woman smiled. Stay out of sight and let the professionals work? Actually, Sarah said, I need you to open the diner at the usual time. Act normal. Cross's people will be watching. If anything's different, they'll know something's wrong. Betty straightened her apron. Honey, I've been serving coffee to criminals for years while gathering evidence against them. I think I can handle one more morning. Thunder crashed outside as Sarah checked her weapons one final time. Remember, she told her team, we're not just defending, we're hunting. These people came to our home thinking we'd be easy prey. Let's show them what happens when predators become prey. The rain intensified as enemy operators moved through the darkened streets. Their night vision equipment gave them confidence, but Sarah knew it would also be their weakness. They were looking through a digital green haze while her people knew every shadow by heart. Ghost lead status, Sarah whispered into her radio. First team moving into the kill zone, 20 operators moving in 4-man cells. Heavy weapons, demo gear. Stone, Iron veterans in position ready to create chaos on your mark. Sarah watched through her scope as the enemy's lead element approached the lighthouse diner. They moved well, covering angles, checking corners. Professional, dangerous, but predictable. Execute Phase 2, she ordered. Across town, the Iron veterans roared to life, their motorcycles thundering through the streets in what appeared to be a panicked evacuation. The enemy operators reacted exactly as trained, splitting their forces to investigate the new threat. Ghost 2, report. Second convoy moving to intercept the bikers. Martinez now. From her position at the old sheriff's office, Martinez triggered the prepared devices. Strategic transformers blew, plunging new sections of town into darkness while illuminating others. The enemy's night vision equipment suddenly became a liability as they dealt with rapidly changing light conditions. Multiple targets disoriented. Ghost 3 confirmed, moving to engage. The first shots were silent, suppressed weapons taking out key targets in the enemy's command structure. By the time they realized they were under attack, the Ghost team had already melted away to new positions. Commander, Mike's voice came through her earpiece. Third convoy is holding back. Their commander's smart. He's realized something's wrong. Good, Sarah replied. That's what the package is for. On cue, she transmitted a burst of encrypted data, the fake list, from a location near the center of town. As predicted, the enemy electronic warfare team picked up the transmission. They're moving, Ghost Lead reported. All units converging on the transmission source. Sarah smiled grimly. Phase 3. All units execute at will. The storm above provided perfect cover as the real battle began. The Iron veterans abandoned their decoy run, instead launching coordinated attacks on the enemy's vehicles. Ghost team operators picked off anyone who tried to call for backup or establish a command position. But it was the town's people who proved most effective. Every door that looked like an escape route led to a prepared ambush. Every shadow concealed a defender who knew exactly where to shoot. The enemy operators found themselves fighting phantoms, never able to establish control or consolidate their forces. Commander, Stone's voice was tight with controlled excitement. They're falling back to preset rally points. No, Sarah ordered. They're falling back to where we want them. The fake list data had led them straight into the town's old warehouse district, a maze of buildings rigged with motion sensors and prepared firing positions. As the enemy operators sought cover, they found themselves being herded into increasingly smaller spaces. Ghost team status? 15 targets eliminated, 20 plus wounded. Rest are contained in the warehouse sector. Sarah switched channels. Mike, what's the third convoy doing? Finally moving in, their commander must have realized his advance teams are being decimated. Perfect. Martinez, initiate final sequence. The remaining streetlights shut down completely, plunging the town into total darkness. The storm above intensified, rain hammering down as lightning split the sky. Through her thermal scope, Sarah watched the remaining enemy forces cluster together in the warehouses. Their training told them to consolidate, to establish a defensive position. Instead, they were doing exactly what she'd planned, gathering in one location. All units be advised, Phase 4 is active. I say again, Phase 4 is weapons-free. The remaining enemy operators never saw it coming. Ghost Team snipers took out their leadership. Iron veterans cut off their escape routes. The townspeople, led by Cooper and Martinez, maintained a constant barrage that kept them pinned down. But it was Sarah who delivered the final blow, moving through the rain like a shadow as she approached the main warehouse where the enemy commander had established his last position. The man who'd led the third convoy, the one who'd held back thinking he was smarter than the rest, time to show him just how wrong he was. "All units hold position," she ordered. "This one's personal." Lightning flashed again as Sarah moved toward the warehouse entrance. The real fight was about to begin. Through her night vision, Sarah counted 6 heat signatures on the upper level, the enemy commander and his remaining elite team. Their voices carried a familiar cadence. Former special operations, she realized. Navy SEALs who'd gone mercenary. "Commander," Mike's voice came through her earpiece. "Got an ID on their leader, Marcus Cross. He was in Singapore." Sarah's blood ran cold. Cross had been there the day her teammates died, working for a different contractor. He disappeared before anyone could question his role in the operation's failure. "So," Cross's voice echoed through the warehouse. "The famous Commander Hayes. Been a long time since Singapore." "Not long enough, Cross. Still hiding behind civilian casualties just like Singapore?" A burst of gunfire replied, rounds impacting where she'd been seconds before. These weren't random shots. Cross's team was trying to herd her into a kill zone. "Singapore was business," Cross called out, "just like this is. You really think your little town can stand against what's coming? The wild wolves were just the beginning." "Ghost Team status on the other forces?" "Contained and neutralized. Iron veterans are running cleanup. Only targets remaining are in your building." "Hear that, Cross?" Sarah replied. "Your backup isn't coming." More gunfire, more controlled this time. They were getting frustrated, making mistakes. 2 operators moved to flank her position, but Sarah was already gone. "You don't get it, do you?" Cross's voice was closer now. "The Wild Wolves organization wasn't the head of the snake. We are. That list contains everything, every operation, every contract, every killer for hire. With that data, we control it all." "Wrong," Sarah replied, her voice echoing. "You don't control anything. Not anymore." She triggered the devices Martinez had planted earlier. Flashbangs detonated on the upper level, followed by smoke grenades. The enemy's night vision equipment became worse than useless as the warehouse filled with disorienting light and smoke. Ghost Team external threats? "Negative, Commander. Building is secure, no reinforcements approaching." Sarah moved upward, using the chaos to her advantage. The first operator never saw her coming. A quick strike to the throat, another to the temple. Silent, efficient. The second tried to radio for help, but received only static. The town's radio jammers were still active, cutting off all communication. "It's over, Cross," Sarah called out. "Your men are dead or captured. Your operation is blown. Surrender now." "Like your team surrendered in Singapore?" The taunt was meant to enrage her, make her sloppy. Instead, it brought perfect clarity. Through the smoke and strobing lights, Sarah moved like a ghost. The third and fourth operators fell to precise shots. The fifth managed to get off a burst of fire before Sarah's knife found his throat. Then it was just her and Cross. "You know what your problem is, Hayes?" His voice was behind her now. "You still think like a soldier. Honor, duty, protecting the innocent. The world doesn't work that way anymore." "You're wrong." Sarah turned, facing him. "That's exactly how it works. You just forgot." They moved simultaneously. Cross was good, one of the best. His strikes were precise, powerful. But Sarah had something he didn't. A reason to win that went beyond money or power. The fight was brutal and close. Bones cracked, blood flowed. Cross landed a crushing blow to her ribs, but Sarah absorbed it, countering with a strike that shattered his knee. Ghost team status, she managed between breaths. Still clear, Commander, end this. As Cross stumbled, Sarah saw her opening. The same move she'd used countless times in training, the one they taught every soldier. This is for Singapore, she said and struck. Cross's eyes widened as he fell, his last words barely a whisper. You don't know what you've done. Sarah stood over him, breathing hard. Actually, I do. Mike, uploading now. Sarah spoke into her radio, standing over Cross's unconscious form. The real list, downloaded from their servers while they were chasing our decoy. Every name, every operation, currently being transmitted to every major intelligence agency worldwide. The storm outside was finally passing, dawn breaking over Lighthouse Cove. Through her thermal scope, Sarah could see the rest of Cross's team being rounded up by the Ghost operators and Iron veterans. The wild wolves who hadn't fled were surrendering, realizing their protection had evaporated. Commander, Ghost Lead's voice crackled through her radio. We've secured the port facilities. Found something interesting. Shipping manifests, bank records, political payoffs. Goes way beyond weapon smuggling. How deep? State level at least, maybe higher. Cross wasn't lying about one thing. This was bigger than the wild wolves. Martinez's voice joined the channel. Sarah, we've got movement at City Hall. Wilson and half the council are trying to leave town. Cooper's team has them contained. Keep them there. The FBI will want to talk to them. Sarah keyed her radio again. Stone, status on the streets? Clean. My boys are running security with the remaining deputies. Town's locked down tight. No one in or out without us knowing. Sarah did one final sweep of the warehouse, gathering any intelligence they might have missed. In Cross's jacket, she found a phone with multiple encrypted channels and a small notebook filled with codes. More evidence for the federal authorities to unravel. Betty's voice came unexpectedly over the radio. They'd given her a spare unit to stay in contact. Honey, you might want to get back to the diner. We've got company. Hostile? Unless the FBI's gotten a lot more aggressive since I last checked, I'd say friendly. About a dozen agents in suits looking very official. Their boss says she knows you. Rodriguez? Sarah smiled. Special Agent Rodriguez had been her contact during the Singapore operation. Tell her I'll be there in 10 and Betty put some coffee on, it's going to be a long morning. The scene at the Lighthouse Diner was almost surreal. FBI agents mingled with Iron Veterans members while deputies chatted with Ghost Team operators who'd already changed into civilian clothes. Betty moved through it all with pots of coffee and plates of her famous apple pie, maintaining an air of normalcy despite the extraordinary circumstances. Commander Hayes? Rodriguez greeted her with a professional nod. Or should I say the retired commander who somehow managed to expose a multinational criminal enterprise from a small-town diner. Just happened to be in the right place at the right time. Rodriguez smiled. Right, and I suppose the highly trained operators who helped take down Cross's organization just happened to be passing through. Or the fact that the Iron Veterans MC is actually a cover for former Special Forces operators? Stone, who'd just walked in, laughed. Ma'am, sometimes the best way to hide is in plain sight. Nobody looks twice at another motorcycle club. We've been tracking Cross for years, Rodriguez continued, spreading files across the counter. Could never get close enough. Then you show up, start trouble with a local gang, and within a week his entire operation falls apart. Want to explain that? Sarah accepted a cup of coffee from Betty. Sometimes bullies need to learn they picked the wrong target. The list you transmitted, it's already causing waves. Criminal networks worldwide are scrambling, corrupt officials are resigning. We've got enough evidence to take down organizations we didn't even know existed. Cooper joined them, looking tired but satisfied. Wilson and the council are singing like canaries. Turns out they've been on Cross's payroll for years, helping him set up shell companies, looking the other way while he built his operation. The Wild Wolves? Sarah asked. Most of the rank and file are in custody, Martinez reported. Spike and his inner circle tried to run, but the Iron Veterans intercepted them at the county line. They're feeling chatty too, especially after we showed them the evidence Betty collected. Betty smiled innocently. Amazing what people will say when they think the old diner owner isn't paying attention. Rodriguez shook her head in admiration. A retired Army commander, a motorcycle club full of Spec Ops veterans, a sheriff's deputy, and a diner owner with a secret notebook. Sounds like the beginning of a bad joke. Sometimes the best operations come from unlikely alliances, Sarah replied. Speaking of operations, Rodriguez lowered her voice. That ghost team of yours, any chance they're interested in more work? We've got other criminal enterprises that could use their attention. You'd have to ask them, Sarah smiled, if you can find them. The ghost operators had already disappeared, leaving no trace of their presence. They'd returned to their normal lives until the next time they were needed. It was their way. Through the diner's windows, Sarah could see Lighthouse Cove coming back to life. The morning sun revealed some damage from the night's fighting, but nothing that couldn't be repaired. More importantly, she saw townspeople walking the streets without fear, holding their heads high. What happens now? Betty asked, refilling coffee cups. Now, Cooper said, we rebuild. Proper law enforcement, legitimate business development. Do things right. Already got calls from neighboring towns, Stone added. Seems word's spreading about what happened here. Other communities dealing with similar problems looking for help. Sarah raised an eyebrow. Looking for help or looking for hope? Both, probably, Martinez answered. People need to know they can stand up to bullies, that they don't have to live in fear. And if they need more than just hope? Rodriguez asked pointedly. Sarah looked around the diner at Betty's quiet strength, Cooper's dedication, Martinez's determination, Stone's professionalism, a team that had come together by chance but had proven more effective than any official task force. Then they'll find it, she said finally, one way or another. Her phone buzzed with a message from Mike. Satellite tracking shows similar operations setting up in 3 other coastal towns. Ghost team standing by if needed. Sarah smiled. The fight wasn't over. It was just beginning. But this time she wasn't facing it alone. She had a team, a purpose, and a home worth protecting. Betty, she called out. Better stock up on coffee. Something tells me your diner's going to stay busy. Betty winked. Honey, my coffee pot's always ready and my notebook's got plenty of blank pages left. After all, somebody's got to keep track of what really happens in these small towns. The FBI agents began coordinating with local law enforcement to process the prisoners. The evidence collection alone would take days. Weapons caches, financial records, encrypted communications, and Betty's detailed notebooks documenting years of criminal activity. The interrogations are already yielding results, Rodriguez informed them. Cross's organization had tentacles in places we never suspected. Port authorities, customs officials, even judges. This is going to shake things up all the way to the state capitol. Good, Sarah replied. Maybe it'll make others think twice before trying to take over small towns. Martinez brought over a fresh batch of surveillance photos. We're finding more storage facilities. They had backup locations we didn't know about. The wild wolves were just the visible part of the operation. There were layers we're only now uncovering. Cross built quite an empire, Cooper observed, studying the photos. And now it's falling apart, Stone added with satisfaction. All because they thought a small town would be an easy target. Sarah's phone lit up with another series of messages. Various intelligence agencies were requesting briefings. Other law enforcement departments were asking for assistance, and Mike reported increased chatter among criminal networks as they scrambled to distance themselves from Cross's operation. We're going to need a bigger diner, Betty joked, watching the steady stream of officials coming through her doors. What we need, Sarah corrected, is to be ready. Cross's organization wasn't the only one out there. Others will try to fill the vacuum. Let them try, Martinez said firmly. We'll be waiting. Rodriguez gathered her files. I need to head back to DC, brief the director. But this isn't over. We'll need your help with the fallout from this. Sarah nodded. You know where to find us. As the morning wore on, the diner became a command center of sorts. Maps spread across tables showed other potential targets, while Betty's coffee-fueled strategy sessions between law enforcement, veterans, and intelligence officials. You know what the real victory is? Sarah asked, watching the activity. It's not just taking down Cross. It's showing other towns they don't have to be victims. They can fight back. And they don't have to fight alone, Stone added. Sarah's phone buzzed one final time. Mike's message was brief. 3 more towns reporting suspicious activity. Same pattern as Cross's operation. Ghost team awaiting orders. Sarah looked at her team. Ready to help some neighbors? The answers came without hesitation. Martinez checked her weapon. Stone grinned. Cooper nodded. Betty just smiled and started brewing more coffee. Outside, the sun had fully risen over Lighthouse Cove. The storm had passed, leaving behind a sky as clear as Sarah's conscience. Cross and his operation were finished, but more importantly, something new had been born. A network of people dedicated to protecting small towns from those who would prey on them. The wild wolves had made a fatal mistake walking into the Lighthouse Diner that day. They'd thought they were intimidating a lone woman. Instead, they'd helped create something they never expected, a force that would change the fate of small towns up and down the coast. And somewhere out there, other bullies were about to learn the same lesson. Sometimes the most dangerous person isn't the one making threats, but the quiet one drinking coffee, just waiting for someone to make a mistake. 3 months after the takedown of Cross's operation, the Lighthouse Diner had transformed. The basement, once a simple storage space, had been renovated into what Betty jokingly called the Situation Room, a secure meeting place for Sarah and her expanding network of allies. Sarah sat at her usual booth, reviewing reports from Stone's teams about suspicious activity along the coast. Martinez, now officially appointed as the new sheriff after Cooper's retirement, joined her with fresh coffee. Got something interesting, Martinez said, sliding a file across the table. Remember those warehouse raids last week? Found documentation linking 3 state officials to Cross's old network. They're scrambling since the list went public. Sarah's attention shifted to the TV mounted in the corner, showing footage of another high-profile arrest. A weapons dealer with connections to Cross, taken down in a neighboring state by unknown operators. She smiled, recognizing Ghost Team's handiwork. Your friends have been busy, Martinez commented. What friends? I just see effective law enforcement at work. The diner's door chimed as Cooper entered with Stone and Rodriguez, all looking serious. Problem? Sarah asked. Rodriguez placed a laptop on the table showing surveillance photos. Remember how we thought Cross's operation was just about weapons? Turns out that was just the surface. We found evidence of human trafficking routes using the same corridors as the weapons shipments. Multiple small towns involved. Cooper added. Local officials bought off. Sound familiar? Sarah studied the photos. The pattern was clear. The same methods Cross had used now being employed by others trying to fill the power vacuum. How many towns? At least 6 that we know of, Stone replied. All small, isolated, vulnerable, just like Lighthouse Cove was. Betty appeared with more coffee and her infamous apple pie. Sounds like someone should do something about that. Already happening, Rodriguez said. Federal task force is being assembled. Very unofficial, very deniable. They're looking for someone to coordinate ground operations. Sarah raised an eyebrow. Let me guess, you recommended someone? Actually, Stone interjected, we all did. The Iron Veterans need direction for their more specialized operations. Ghost Team operates better with familiar command, and having a sheriff's special advisor provides useful cover. Plus, Betty added, you need something to do between teaching those self-defense classes. The classes had been Sarah's idea, helping townspeople protect themselves, building confidence and community. The waiting list was now 3 months long. What about here? Sarah asked. This town still needs protecting. Martinez smiled. We've learned a few things. Besides, you won't be far. Just expanding the definition of home territory. Sarah's phone buzzed with a message from Mike. Got movement on those trafficking cases. Time sensitive. Team standing by for your call. She looked around at her unlikely family. Betty's quiet strength, Martinez's determined leadership, Cooper's steady wisdom, Stone's tactical expertise, Rodriguez's official backing. All part of something larger now. A network dedicated to protecting those who couldn't protect themselves. You know what the real problem was with Cross and operations like his? Sarah said, studying the surveillance photos. They prey on towns like Lighthouse Cove because they think small communities are weak. They mistake kindness for weakness, quiet for cowardice. They forget that small towns are built on community, Betty added, refilling coffee cups, on people looking out for each other. Exactly, Sarah continued. Cross thought he could control this town through fear and corruption. He never understood that real strength doesn't come from having the most guns or the most money. It comes from people standing together, Martinez finished. Sarah's phone buzzed again, this time a message from Ghost Lead. Team assembled, multiple targets identified, awaiting your command. Outside, a group of Iron veterans rode past on patrol, their presence now a comfort to the townspeople rather than a source of fear. Through the diner's windows, Sarah could see Lighthouse Cove thriving, businesses reopening, families walking without fear, community returning stronger than ever. You know what I learned in the Army? Sarah said, looking at her team. The most effective operations aren't always about having the biggest force or the most advanced equipment. Sometimes it's about having the right people in the right place, working together for the right reasons. And now other towns need that same lesson, Rodriguez added. Sarah nodded. Cross and his people thought small towns were easy targets. They were wrong about Lighthouse Cove, and we're going to make sure they're wrong about these other towns too. Expanding operations will be complicated, Stone warned. We'll need more resources, more coordination. Good thing we've got a diner with a secure basement, he smiled, and plenty of coffee. And good thing we've got people who know how to move in the shadows, Martinez added, nodding to where a ghost team member sat quietly in the corner, blending in perfectly with the morning crowd. Sarah's phone lit up with multiple messages. Mike, satellite coverage confirmed for next operation. Ghost Lead. Teams in position at 3 locations. Stone. Iron veterans ready to move. Rodriguez. Federal backup standing by. Off the books. Well, Sarah said, opening her laptop. Show me what we know about these towns. Let's help them like we helped Lighthouse Cove. Betty placed a fresh slice of pie in front of her. Just remember, honey, no matter how far you roam, you've always got a home base here. And my coffee pot's always on. And my notebook's got plenty of blank pages, she added with a wink. Sarah smiled. The fight wasn't over, it was evolving, growing. But now she had something she'd never had before. A true team, a clear purpose, and a home worth fighting for. Cross had thought he was building an empire, but he'd actually helped create something far more powerful. A network of people dedicated to protecting the vulnerable and standing up to bullies wherever they appeared. All right, Sarah said, addressing her team. Let's get to work. We've got some towns to save. The sun was setting over Lighthouse Cove when Mike's emergency alert came through. Major operation forming in Cedar Grove. Pattern matches Cross's playbook. Multiple hostile forces converging. Local law enforcement compromised. Sarah studied the satellite imagery Mike had sent. Cedar Grove was 3 hours north, another small coastal town, similar to Lighthouse Cove. Population 5,000, isolated, vulnerable. Perfect target for criminal enterprises looking to establish new territory. What do we know? Sarah asked during the emergency briefing in the Lighthouse Diner's basement. Rodriguez pulled up files on the screen. Town's been seeing increased criminal activity over the past month. Motorcycle gang called the Night Raiders moved in first, started with the usual protection rackets. Now we're seeing the same signs we saw here. Corrupt officials, suspicious port activity, unexplained wealth. They're following Cross's template exactly, Stone observed, using the gang as cover while they set up the real operation. Martinez pointed to surveillance photos. These aren't regular gang members. See their movement patterns? Professional military training. They're using the Night Raiders like Cross used the Wild Wolves. Local resistance? Sarah asked. Some, Cooper replied. Sheriff there is clean but isolated. Mayor's in the Raiders' pocket. Town's divided, scared, just like we were. Betty, who'd been quietly taking notes, spoke up. Got a call from a diner owner there, Mary Prescott. She's been gathering evidence just like I did. Says things are coming to a head. They're moving something big through the port tomorrow night. Sarah's phone buzzed again. Ghost Lead. Advanced team in position. Confirming heavy enemy presence. At least 40 operators, well equipped. They're expecting resistance. Good, Sarah said. Let's give them more than they expect. Stone? Iron veterans can be ready in 2 hours. 15 riders, all combat veterans. Martinez? I can spare 6 deputies, all trained in the new protocols. Rodriguez adjusted her jacket. Unofficial federal backing as always, and I've got 3 teams of agents who'd love to accidentally be in the right place at the right time. Sarah nodded, formulating the plan. They're expecting conventional resistance, local law enforcement, maybe rival gangs. We give them what they're expecting, let them think they've got everything under control. Meanwhile, Ghost Team hits them from the shadows. Exactly, Cooper finished. Betty, contact Mary, tell her to be ready but stay safe. Her evidence will be crucial later. Already did, honey. She's smarter than they think, just like someone else I know. Sarah spread out a map of Cedar Grove. They've got numbers and equipment, but we've got something better. Experience. We know their playbook because we've seen it before. More importantly, we know how to beat it. Her phone lit up with messages from the team. Mike. Satellite coverage confirmed. Full monitoring package. Ghost lead. Target packages identified. Awaiting go order. Stone. Iron veterans rolling. ETA 3 hours. Martinez. Deputies mobile. Moving in civilian vehicles. Remember, Sarah addressed her team. These people think small towns are easy targets. They think they can walk in, buy a few officials, intimidate the locals, and take control. They're about to learn the same lesson Cross learned. Speaking of lessons, Betty added, Mary says the night raiders have been pressuring local businesses, pushing people around. Sounds like they need a reminder about picking the wrong targets. Sarah smiled. Then let's give them one they won't forget. The next few hours were a blur of activity. The Iron veterans departed in small groups, taking different routes to avoid attention. Martinez's deputies moved out disguised as civilian traffic. Ghost Team reported final positions around Cedar Grove. Even Betty's network of diner owners along the coast was activated, providing safe houses and gathering intelligence. As Sarah geared up for the operation, she looked around the basement at her core team. What had started as a simple act of standing up to bullies had evolved into something much more. A specialized unit dedicated to protecting small towns from those who would prey on them. Remember Lighthouse Cove, she told them. Remember how it felt to be afraid, to think you were alone against something too big to fight. Cedar Grove feels that way right now. Tonight we show them they're not alone. We show them that small towns can fight back. Her phone buzzed one final time. Multiple vehicles entering Cedar Grove. Heavy weapons, professional operators. Whatever they're planning, it's happening soon. Good, Sarah replied, because so are we. Rodriguez checked her weapon. You know, when I was assigned to investigate Cross's operation, I never expected to end up part of a secret task force protecting small towns. Life's funny that way, Betty said, handing out fresh coffee and travel mugs. Sometimes you find your true calling in the last place you'd expect. Mount up, Sarah ordered. Ghost Team is in position. Iron veterans are nearing the target. Martinez's deputies are in place. Time to show these people why you don't underestimate small towns. As they moved out, Sarah thought about how much had changed since that morning in the Lighthouse Diner, when 2 bikers thought they could intimidate a quiet woman drinking coffee. They'd started a chain of events that would reshape not just Lighthouse Cove, but small towns up and down the coast. Ready to make some new bullies regret their life choices? Martinez asked, checking her tactical gear. Sarah chambered around in her weapon. More than ready. Let's go teach the night raiders why you should always be careful who you pick a fight with. Outside, engines roared to life as the team prepared to move out. The night was clear, stars shining bright over Lighthouse Cove. Somewhere north, Cedar Grove was about to learn that they weren't alone in their fight, and the people trying to take over their town were about to learn a harsh lesson about underestimating small towns and the people who protected them. The approach to Cedar Grove was executed with military precision. Sarah's team moved in stages, careful to avoid drawing attention. Ghost Team operators had already mapped the Night Raiders' patrol routes and security positions, identifying vulnerabilities in their defenses. Ghost Lead status, Sarah whispered into her radio as they neared the town limits. Enemy forces concentrated around the port area. Main group appears to be preparing for a major shipment. Secondary forces patrolling town center. They've got the sheriff's office surrounded. Confirmed, Stone added. My scouts report heavy weapons. Professional operators mixed with gang members. They're expecting trouble but looking in the wrong direction. Sarah checked the satellite feed on her tablet. The Night Raiders had set up checkpoints at all major roads into town, but they'd left the old logging trails unwatched. Amateur mistake. Martinez, your people in position? Affirmative. Deputies are spread through town, all in civilian cover, ready to move on your signal. Rodriguez checked her secure phone. FBI teams are standing by, disguised as fishing boats offshore. They'll move in once we have evidence of criminal activity. Sarah's phone lit up with a message from Mary Prescott, the local diner owner. Large group just came in, all armed, trying not to show it. Their leaders are meeting with the mayor in my back room. Got the recorder running like Betty showed me. Good girl, Betty remarked, monitoring communications from the mobile command center they'd set up in a modified RV. She's got ice in her veins, that one. Sarah studied the tactical display. The Night Raiders had turned Cedar Grove into a fortress, but they'd made the same mistake Cross had. They were preparing for a conventional assault, not understanding that their greatest threat would come from within. All units execute Phase 1, Sarah ordered. Across Cedar Grove, carefully planned distractions began. The Iron Veterans launched their signature loud approach from the east, drawing attention. Martinez's deputies, positioned in civilian vehicles, created a traffic jam at the main checkpoint. Ghost Team operators triggered false alarms at several warehouses. They're splitting their forces, Ghost Lead reported, just like Lighthouse Cove. Sarah watched through her scope as the enemy commanders tried to coordinate their response. Their radio communications, intercepted by Mike's equipment, showed growing confusion. Unknown riders approaching from the east, one voice crackled. Multiple civilian vehicles blocking Route 1. Possible breach at Warehouse 3. No, Warehouse 5. Wait, alarms at all locations. They're losing control of their security perimeter, Stone observed with satisfaction. Sarah keyed her radio. Phase 2. Ghost Team, you have weapons free on designated targets. Stone, begin your run. Martinez, light them up. The real attack began with surgical precision. Ghost Team operators eliminated key enemy commanders with suppressed weapons. The Iron Veterans' distraction turned into a genuine assault on the Night Raiders' outer defenses. Martinez's deputies emerged from their civilian covers, targeting specific enemies identified by their intel. Mary reports the leaders are panicking, Betty relayed. They're trying to call in reinforcements, but our jammers are blocking communications. Good. Time for Phase 3. Sarah moved forward with her personal team, a mix of Ghost operators and Iron veterans. They headed for the port facility where, according to their intelligence, the Night Raiders were preparing to receive a major shipment. Commander, Ghost Lead's voice was tight with controlled excitement. You need to see this. Northwest warehouse, main storage area. Sarah diverted to the location, moving silently through the chaos of battle. Inside the warehouse, she found what the Night Raiders had been hiding. Dozens of shipping containers filled with weapons, drugs, and detailed logs of criminal operations. Just like Cross, she muttered. They're not just taking over the town, they're setting up a distribution hub. Sarah, Martinez's voice cut in urgently. We've got movement at the diner. The leaders are trying to run. Not happening. Sarah switched channels. Ghost 3 and 4 converge on Mary's diner. Stone, cut off their escape routes. Betty, tell Mary to get clear. The Night Raiders' leader made it 3 steps out of the diner's back door before finding himself surrounded by Ghost Team operators. The mayor, trying to slip away in the confusion, was caught by Martinez's deputies. Commander, Rodriguez called. We've got enough evidence. FBI teams are moving in. Sarah watched as the carefully constructed operation fell apart. The Night Raiders, their leadership eliminated and their plans in chaos, began surrendering. The professional operators, realizing they'd been outmaneuvered, tried to flee but found every escape route blocked. Just like Lighthouse Cove, Cooper observed through the radio. They never saw it coming. Because they made the same mistakes, Sarah replied. They thought they could take over a small town through fear and intimidation. They never understood that small towns have their own strength. As the sun rose over Cedar Grove, the full scope of their victory became clear. The night raiders were in custody, their criminal enterprise exposed. The corrupted officials were being arrested, and most importantly, the townspeople were emerging from their homes realizing they were finally free. "Mary's serving free coffee to everyone," Betty reported with satisfaction. "Says it's a new day for Cedar Grove." Sarah smiled, remembering similar scenes in Lighthouse Cove months ago. "Make sure she knows she's not alone anymore. No small town is, not while we're around." Her phone buzzed with a message from Mike. "Similar pattern detected in 3 other coastal towns. Ghost team standing by." "Looks like our work isn't done," Martinez observed. Sarah checked her weapon, already thinking about the next operation. It's never done, but that's okay. Someone has to stand up for these towns and remind the bullies why they should be careful who they pick fights with. "Because sometimes," Betty added, "the most dangerous person isn't the one with the biggest gang or the most weapons." "Sometimes," Sarah finished, watching the FBI boats approach the harbor. "It's the quiet woman drinking coffee in a small-town diner, just waiting for someone to make the mistake of causing trouble." 6 months after the takedown of Cross's operation, Sarah's network had grown beyond anything she could have imagined. The basement of the Lighthouse Diner had become the nerve center for operations protecting small towns all along the coast. Betty's wall of intelligence had expanded to include maps, photos, and evidence collected from multiple operations. "We've got movement," Martinez announced, entering the basement command center. "Remember those shipping manifests we found in Cedar Grove? Just match them to activities in Millbrook Harbor." Sarah looked up from her tactical display. "The fishing town? What's the pattern?" "Same as Lighthouse Cove and Cedar Grove. Small gang moves in first, starts pushing people around. Then the professionals arrive, looking to set up shipping operations." Stone, who'd been monitoring communications, added his report. "Gang calls themselves the Harbor Kings. Local law enforcement's already compromised. Mayor's son just bought a new yacht he shouldn't be able to afford." "They're not even trying to be subtle anymore," Cooper observed. "It's like they're following a playbook." "They are," Rodriguez confirmed, spreading out new files. "We've identified a pattern. After we shut down Cross's operation, his associates scattered. Now they're each trying to rebuild his empire piece by piece. Small towns, corrupt officials, legitimate businesses as fronts." Sarah's phone buzzed with an update from Ghost Lead. "Surveillance confirms heavy weapon shipments moving through Millbrook Harbor. Professional security teams on site. They're building something big." "How many times do they have to learn?" Betty wondered, pouring fresh coffee. "Small towns aren't easy targets anymore." "They haven't learned," Sarah replied. "They still think Lighthouse Cove and Cedar Grove were flukes. They don't understand what they're really facing." Martinez pulled up the satellite imagery. Ghost teams identified 3 main compounds the Harbor Kings are using. Old fishing warehouses as cover. Local police chiefs been ordered to stay away. "Just like Wilson did here," Cooper noted. "Difference is," Stone added, "we know their moves now. We can get ahead of them." Sarah's phone lit up with a series of messages. Mike. Facial recognition matched 3 former Cross associates in Millbrook. Ghost Lead, target packages ready, teams in position. Iron veterans, scout reports Harbor Patrol bought off. No official response incoming. "They think they're being clever," Sarah said, studying the intel. "Using the same methods that worked for Cross. Thinking lightning can't strike 3 times. Want to prove them wrong?" Martinez asked, checking her tactical gear. "Not yet." Sarah pulled up more satellite footage. "Look at their patrol patterns. They're expecting resistance from local law enforcement or rival gangs, just like the others. They're preparing for the wrong kind of fight." Betty approached with a fresh pot of coffee and a knowing smile. "Got a call from Millbrook's local diner owner. Says the Harbor Kings have been pressuring businesses, making examples of anyone who resists. Reminds me of some other bullies we dealt with." History repeating itself, Cooper mused. No, Sarah corrected. History teaching a lesson, one these people refuse to learn. Rodriguez checked her secure phone. FBI teams are ready, off the books as usual. Ghost team in position? Sarah asked. Affirmative. 6 operators spread through key locations. They've mapped every patrol route, identified all security weaknesses. Iron veterans? Stone grinned. 20 riders ready to raise hell on your command. Martinez? 10 deputies, all veterans of Cedar Grove. They know the playbook. Sarah stood, addressing her assembled team. These people think they're smart, following Cross's methods. They don't realize that's exactly why they'll fail. We know their moves before they make them. We know their weaknesses before they show them. She activated the main tactical display showing Millbrook Harbor's layout. They're expecting the usual threats: local cops, rival gangs, maybe federal investigation. What they're not expecting is us, a ghost team that can strike from anywhere. Iron veterans who know how to fight smarter, not just harder. Deputies trained in our methods, and most importantly, a network of small towns ready to stand together. Betty added, fresh intel from her diner network. Word is they're moving something big tomorrow night. Some kind of demonstration to show other towns what happens if they resist. Perfect timing, Sarah smiled. Let's show them what happens when they mess with the wrong towns. She checked her own gear as her team prepared for deployment. Remember Lighthouse Cove, she told them. Remember Cedar Grove. Remember every small town these people thought they could control through fear and corruption. Tonight we add Millbrook Harbor to that list. Her phone buzzed one final time. Mike, multiple hostile forces converging on Millbrook. Whatever they're planning, it's big. Good, Sarah replied. So is our response. As her team moved out, Sarah thought about that morning in the Lighthouse Diner, when 2 bikers thought they could intimidate their way to control. They'd started something they never expected, a network dedicated to protecting small towns from those who would prey on them. Ready to teach some new bullies an old lesson? Martinez asked, checking her weapons. Sarah chambered around in her rifle. Always. Let's show the Harbor Kings why smart predators avoid small towns these days. Outside, engines roared to life as the team prepared to move. The night was clear, perfect for their operation. Somewhere out there, the Harbor Kings thought they were about to demonstrate their power. Instead, they were about to become another example of why you should never underestimate small towns or the quiet warriors who protected them. Betty watched them gear up, already preparing fresh coffee for their return. Something tells me Millbrook's going to have a different kind of demonstration tonight. They certainly will, Sarah replied. Just not the kind the Harbor Kings are expecting. The approach to Millbrook Harbor was executed in complete silence under the cover of darkness. Sarah's team moved into position, while ghost team operators had already infiltrated key locations throughout the port facility. Through her night vision goggles, Sarah could see the Harbor King's security patrols moving with the false confidence of those who thought they were untouchable. Ghost lead status, Sarah whispered into her radio. All targets marked. Hostile force significantly larger than anticipated. Counting 50-plus operators, military-grade equipment. They've got something big planned. Stone's voice crackled through the comms. Confirmed. My scouts report heavy weapons being moved into position around the harbor. They're fortifying for something. Sarah studied the thermal imagery on her tactical display. The Harbor Kings had transformed 3 warehouses into fortified compounds with professional security teams protecting what appeared to be a massive weapons cache. Martinez, your people in position? Affirmative. Deputies are embedded throughout the town. Ready on your signal. Rodriguez checked her secure phone. FBI teams are in place disguised as fishing crews. We've got the harbor covered. Sarah's phone lit up with a message from Helen, the local diner owner. Major meeting happening now? Harbor Kings leadership all present? They're planning some kind of demonstration tomorrow. Something about making an example. Betty's voice came through the command channel. Just like they did in Lighthouse Cove. They always start with a show of force. Sarah watched through her scope as more vehicles arrived at the main warehouse. The Harbor Kings were gathering their full strength, preparing to demonstrate their power to the town, just like Cross had tried. just like the night raiders had attempted in Cedar Grove. "All units execute Phase 1, Sarah ordered. Across Millbrook Harbor, carefully orchestrated chaos erupted. The Iron Veterans launched diversionary attacks from multiple directions. Martinez's deputies, disguised as local traffic, created strategic blockades. Ghost Team operators triggered the harbor's emergency systems, causing confusion among the enemy forces. They're splitting their response," Ghost Lead reported. "Security teams breaking formation exactly as predicted." Sarah watched through her thermal scope as the enemy commanders tried to coordinate their forces. Their radio communications, intercepted by Mike's equipment, revealed growing panic. "Multiple breaches reported, unknown riders on the north side, loss of communication with outer teams." "They're losing control," Stone observed, just like the others. Sarah keyed her radio. "Execute Phase 2. Ghost Team, you have weapons free on designated targets. Stone, begin your assault. Martinez, light them up." The real attack hit the Harbor Kings from every direction. Ghost Team operators eliminated key leaders with surgical precision. The Iron Veterans' feint turned into a devastating assault on their defensive positions. Martinez's deputies emerged from cover, targeting specific enemies based on their intelligence. "Helen reports their leadership is trying to flee," Betty relayed. "They're heading for the emergency boats." "Not happening," Sarah responded. "Ghost 3 and 4 cut off their escape. Stone, block the marina. Rodriguez, time to bring in your teams." The Harbor Kings leaders made it halfway to their escape boats before finding themselves surrounded by ghost operators. Their professional security teams, realizing they'd been outmaneuvered, tried to mount a defense but found themselves caught between the Iron Veterans and FBI assault teams. "Commander," Ghost Lead's voice was urgent, "you need to see what's in the main warehouse." Sarah moved quickly through the chaos of battle, entering the warehouse through a side entrance. Inside, she found what the Harbor Kings had been preparing: enough weapons and ammunition to arm a small army, along with detailed plans for taking over other coastal towns. "Just as we thought," she muttered. "They were planning to expand." "Sarah!" Martinez called urgently. "We've got movement at the town hall. Looks like some officials trying to quietly disappear. Ghost 5 and 6 intercept. No one leaves town until we've confirmed their involvement." The battle for Millbrook Harbor lasted less than an hour, but its impact would be felt for years. The Harbor Kings, their leadership captured and their operations exposed, collapsed completely. Their professional security teams, finding themselves outmatched, surrendered to FBI forces. As dawn broke over the harbor, Sarah watched as federal agents processed the scene. Local residents who'd lived in fear for months emerged to witness their town's liberation. "Just like Lighthouse Cove," Cooper observed. "They learn," Sarah corrected. "They just learn the wrong lessons. They see towns like this as weak, isolated. They never understand that small communities have their own strength." Her phone buzzed with a message from Mike. "Similar operations identified in 2 more coastal towns. Ghost Team ready for deployment." "Looks like we're not done," Martinez noted. Sarah checked her weapon, already thinking about the next operation. "We're never done. As long as there are people who think they can prey on small towns, we'll be here to prove them wrong and remind them." "And remind them," Betty added through the radio, "that sometimes the most dangerous person isn't the one with the biggest gang or the most guns." "Sometimes," Sarah agreed, watching the sun rise over Millbrook Harbor. "It's the quiet ones. The ones who decide that enough is enough. The ones who stand up and fight back." Around her, the town was coming back to life. The Harbor Kings were gone, their attempt to build a criminal empire shattered like those who'd tried before them. And somewhere out there, other towns were waiting, needing the same help, the same hope that Lighthouse Cove had found that morning when 2 bikers made the mistake of picking the wrong target. "Ready to save another town?" Martinez asked, checking her gear. Sarah smiled, thinking of that morning in the Lighthouse Diner that seemed so long ago. "Always ready, because someone has to remind these bullies why they should be careful who they pick fights with." "And why," Betty added, "they should always think twice before causing trouble in a small town." 1 year after the confrontation that started it all in the Lighthouse Diner, Sarah stood at her usual window booth, watching the morning fog roll in from the ocean. The town had changed in ways she never expected. Lighthouse Cove had become more than just a quiet coastal community. It had become a symbol of hope for small towns everywhere. Betty approached with fresh coffee just like she had that fateful morning. "Penny for your thoughts?" "Just thinking about how it all started," Sarah replied. Two bikers who thought they could intimidate a diner owner and found an army general instead. Betty smiled, though her next words were interrupted by Sarah's phone buzzing with the morning intelligence briefing from Mike. In the past year, their network had disrupted criminal operations in 12 coastal towns, dismantled 3 major trafficking rings, and exposed dozens of corrupt officials. The Ghost team had become legendary among criminal circles, an invisible force that struck without warning, protecting small communities from those who would prey on them. "Got something interesting," Martinez said, sliding into the booth. Now a seasoned sheriff, she'd helped train law enforcement in other towns, teaching them how to resist corruption and stand against intimidation. "Remember those files we found in Millbrook Harbor? Finally finished decrypting them." "What did you find?" "Names, dates, locations. Turns out Cross wasn't just building a criminal empire. He was creating a template, a way for others to target and take over small towns systematically." Stone entered the diner, followed by Cooper and Rodriguez. The Iron Veterans leader looked serious. "That explains what we're seeing up and down the coast. Different groups, same playbook." "They're learning," Rodriguez added, spreading surveillance photos across the table. "After what happened here, in Cedar Grove and Millbrook Harbor, they're getting more careful, operating in smaller groups, staying mobile, but still targeting small towns. Still thinking they can control communities through fear and corruption," Cooper observed. Sarah studied the photos. The patterns were clear, criminal organizations adapting their methods but still underestimating the strength of small communities, still making the same fundamental mistake that Cross and the Wild Wolves had made. "They're not the only ones who've learned," Sarah said. "Every town we help becomes stronger. Every community that stands up becomes an example for others." Her phone lit up with multiple messages. Ghost lead. New activity detected in 3 coastal locations. Iron Veterans. Scout reports suspicious movement in harbor towns north of here. Mike. Satellite shows pattern matching Cross's template. Betty refreshed their coffee cups. "Looks like some people still need to learn the hard way." "They never understand," Martinez said. "They see small towns as easy targets. They never expect to find people like us waiting for them." "That's their biggest mistake," Sarah replied. "They think they can walk into any small town, throw their weight around and take control. They never realize that these communities have their own strength, their own protectors." Rodriguez checked her secure phone. "FBI's been tracking increased criminal activity along the coast. They're getting organized, sharing resources." "Good," Stone smiled. "Makes them easier to find." Sarah stood, moving to the window. Outside, Lighthouse Cove was alive with morning activity. Families walked without fear, businesses thrived, and the community had grown stronger than ever. The Wild Wolves were gone, their attempted takeover now just a story told in Betty's notebook. "You know what the real difference is?" Sarah asked. "Between us and them? Besides the fact that we're the good guys?" "Besides that," Martinez quipped. "They see small towns as targets. We see them as home. They think they can control communities through fear. We know that real strength comes from people standing together." Her phone buzzed again. Helen from Millbrook Harbor. "Strange bikes in town? New gang trying to move in? Remember how you helped us?" "Never ends, does it?" Cooper observed. "It's not supposed to," Sarah replied. "As long as there are people who think they can prey on small towns, we'll be here to prove them wrong." Betty appeared with a fresh pot of coffee and her infamous apple pie. "Well then, guess we better fuel up. Sounds like we've got more bullies to teach some manners to." "You know what I've learned this past year?" Sarah said, looking at her team. "That morning when those bikers walked in, they thought they were just picking on a lone woman in a diner. They never realized they were starting something much bigger. A network," Martinez added. A mission, Stone continued. A family, Betty finished. Sarah's phone lit up with final confirmation from Ghost Lead. Teams in position at all 3 locations, awaiting your command. She looked around at her unlikely family. The diner owner who'd started it all, the sheriff who'd found her courage, the Iron Veterans leader who'd become a trusted ally, the FBI agent who'd chosen to fight from the shadows, and all the others who'd joined their cause. Well then, Sarah said, checking her weapon, let's go remind some people why you should always be careful who you pick a fight with in small towns. And why? Betty added with a knowing smile. The quiet woman drinking coffee might just be the most dangerous person in the room. Outside, engines roared to life as the team prepared to move out. Somewhere along the coast, other small towns were waiting for help, for hope, for someone to show them they weren't alone. And Sarah's team would be there, just as they had been since that morning when 2 bikers made the mistake that changed everything. The morning sun cast long shadows across Lighthouse Cove as Sarah's team rolled out, ready to face whatever came next. Because sometimes the biggest mistakes lead to the most important changes, and sometimes the worst decision a bully can make is walking into a small-town diner, thinking they've found an easy target. After all, you never know who might be sitting there quietly drinking their coffee, just waiting for someone to make that mistake. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.